I know that this introduction is unconventional for the Rec Room, but it's episode 20, and it's with one of the premier guests that we could have, especially because it's about to be the month of March. Jay Bilas is a commentator, a lawyer, and somebody who is known throughout these different circles of golf, of basketball, and life. Folks, stay tuned for much more on the Rec Room coming up next with Jay Bilas, American basketball commentator. Well, everybody, welcome back to the Rec Room with Brian Rector. And today, I get the chance to be doing a filming in Nashville, Tennessee, which is a place that I've never been before. And I'm really excited to check out Broadway and everything that the city has to offer. Just got here after making the trip in from East Lansing, and there is no better way to usher in being in Nashville and the upcoming change of the calendar to the month of March. And folks, I am just so fortunate and grateful to have the man for March himself, Jay Bilas. Jay, thank you for being here, and how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Brian. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be with you.
Most certainly. I want to be honest with you. When I got your response and said you'd be willing to come on, my jaw hit the floor. It was one that I was so proud to hear. And having followed you through the Maui Gym Invitationals and all of your callings over the years and learning about the beginnings to your time, even back at Duke, I was very starstruck. And I appreciate the fact that you're willing to do it. But that brings us to where we're at, which is we're about to flip the calendar to March. And I have to know, Mr. Bilas, is what are your assertions with how the college basketball season is going to this point, and what should we be expecting as the calendar does flip into March?
Brian, I think it's been a great year. I think the game is in a great place. The players are better than they've ever been. The coaching's better than it's ever been. I think interest is really high, and the quality of play has been really good. So I'm expecting a really fun March. Like you know this, every NCAA tournament, conference tournaments, they're all different. So one year, all the favorites seem to win, and you get a powerful kind of chalky Final Four, and it's great. And then other years, you get kind of upsets and a little guy breaks through and you have a Cinderella thing, and it's great. There's never a time where the tournament's not really fun. And I can't imagine that this tournament in 2025 is going to be any different. Hopefully it'll be unique and we see something maybe we haven't seen before. But even if we see something we have seen before, it's a great story and really fun to watch.
Most certainly. Off the back of that, there are two things about the game and about the tournament upcoming that I strongly desire to know. The first is, what do you think about this year's SEC? Because I feel like conventional wisdom says it too, as a conference, is the strongest it's ever been and could see as many bids as any conference ever has. Do you think the hype around the conference is real and something that we should be talking about?
Oh, I know it's real. It's the best conference top to bottom relative to the field that I've ever seen.
Mm.
Now, people process that differently. It doesn't mean that, the 2000 Michigan State national championship team wouldn't beat every team in this year's SEC. Maybe it would, but there's never been 16 teams in one league that have performed at this level, and especially relative to the rest of the country. It's remarkable what that league has accomplished and what it is accomplished. The numbers prove it. And now that you say that, it doesn't mean that all elite eight teams are going to be from the SEC or the national champion is coming from there. You can have the best league by far. Like you'll probably remember this a few years ago. I don't remember exactly what year it is off the top of my head. The Big Ten was the best league.
That's
I
right.
mean, it was, and people, it was. I didn't even think it was close. And the Big Ten performed really poorly in the NCAA tournament.
Yes.
People are like, "See, you guys wasn't that good of a league." Well, those two things aren't always the same thing.
Sure.
I still think it was the best league. They underperformed from what we expected, But taking one game or 1 week or all that and comparing it against a body of work in a whole season, just because Auburn lost in the first round of last year's tournament to Yale doesn't mean they weren't worthy of their seed.
Mm,
It's that kind of argument.
most certainly. Most certainly. And then, as we touched on at the very beginning of the show, one of the things that kind of doesn't necessarily change because you were just in Houston calling an NBA game, but what does the month of March look like for you for folks who are unaware of what your schedule will turn into?
A little more hectic than some of the other months. I mean, I travel a lot. I'm gone probably 5 days a week, calling basketball games and doing studio work, I guess, with College Game Day during the regular season. I've already called over, I think it's over 40 games, if I've
Mm.
counted right, and it's going to be another 20 before the season's over, I think. So that's a lot, but it's fun. I really enjoy it. But I'll be on the road a little bit more with conference tournaments coming up. So I'm going to be in Nashville for the SEC tournament, and so that'll be 9 games in 5 days, and that's a lot of basketball, but it's a lot of fun too. I mean, you get to sit courtside for some of the best games in the country, and then you got Selection Sunday on that Sunday of championship week, and then we start on the sprint to the national championship in San Antonio. It's pretty fun time.
Oh, most certainly. And I think one of the things that I'm most fascinated by out of what you just said is how many games you have called and will continue to. Me being a student broadcaster and trying to figure out this thing and crack the code around preparation and how to begin to make it in this field. When you do so many games at such a high volume and are constantly traveling around, changing the teams, how do you feel like your preparation changes as you're gearing up for these later games after you've seen the clubs? You know what to expect, and it becomes to a higher standard of play.
Yeah, I don't think it changes, Brian. I think it may get a little bit easier because you've got a base of knowledge that you're bringing in, so you're sort of adding to that and refining it and looking for things that are going to matter now. Things may have changed from when you saw a team 2 weeks ago. It's a lot easier right now because of the technology. Like I watch a ton of game film.
Mm.
I use the same scouting service that basically every college team or pro team uses. It's called Synergy. So I can watch whatever game I want whenever I want, and I make use of it. So I'm watching all the time. I watch on regular TV too. If I'm at home, there's always a game on. I'm flipping back and forth while I'm doing other things. But when I really want to dig into things, I'm probably using Synergy more than anything else. There are other things that I use, but those are the primary things I use to watch games.
Sure, sure, and I wanted to tell you this. I relate to the seat that you sit in the way of being a analyst for the game. My role at Michigan State this year was being the lead analyst for Michigan State volleyball, and in doing that, I realized that you're being asked quite a few questions, and I know that you're somebody who is on podcasts, you're in that color analyst seat, you're doing studio shows, constantly being asked questions. But what I desire to know, Jay, is what is something that you wish you could answer more or something that you could share on more, just in life as a whole?
That's an interesting question. I mean, I think because of the job that I have, people tend to ask me questions about me a lot, and I'm not always comfortable with that. Clearly, I do it because it's part of the job. But I honestly, Brian, I like it when I get asked questions about my colleagues and my teammates. Because they're so good at what they do. I get a chance to work with some of the best people that have ever worked in this business, in my view, and to be able to work with Dan Schulman doing games and then when I'm in the studio, I'm with Reese Davis, and I've worked with him for, good God, 25, 30 years, give or
Mhm.
take. And Reese is the best teammate I've ever had in anything. And then to get to, I've been working with Seth Greenberg for a long time, Jay Williams. It's ridiculous, the quality of people, but it's more, it's not just the people I work alongside on the air. Um, the folks that you don't know because they work behind the camera, the producers, the directors, technical directors. Like we had is really interesting. We had an audio problem at the NBA game the other night in Houston. All of a sudden, our audio just completely is gone
Mhm.
about a half hour, 50 minutes before the game. And our crew, it was like watching Apollo 13 or something. They figured out how to get us on the air and nobody panicked. They had contingency plans for if they couldn't work it out, but it was unbelievable watching those people do that job. And it wasn't easy for anybody, but I mean, it was like a combination of Apollo 13, Mission Impossible, and a MacGyver. And they just kind of shrugged their shoulders at the end of it and kind of moved on. I was like, man, that was amazing. And when you get to work with people like that, it makes you grateful to be a part of this.
Mm, certainly. Even at Michigan State, with our student production for Big Ten Student U, I've become accustomed to building the camaraderie and chemistry that you speak of. If you had to provide a couple of pieces of advice for somebody like me who's looking to keep doing that, building those teams and strengthening that connection to create a better show, what would you say are the key pieces to that?
I think the first is gratitude and appreciation for what other people do to make the broadcast work. Um, Look, I'm not naive. I know that the people in front of the camera get way more credit than they deserve. Me being chief among those, but nothing works without the people behind the camera that are, because there are far more of them and they're superstars in their jobs, like superstars. Now they can walk down the street and nobody knows it. Like you can't do that when people know who you are. But I mean, you get this. I tend to get this overinflated sense of worth sometimes when the truth is the ones behind the camera are the real superstars in this. So appreciating it by one understanding it, but then making sure you let people know how much you value what they do. Like it's important to catch like everybody's really good at, myself included, at complaining about when something's not right. Complaining about when this didn't work out, or hey, we didn't do this, or we should have done this. I get that. There's some value in that too, but you got to catch people doing it right too. And when they do a good job, you got to let them know how much you appreciate it. I think that really builds morale. I mean, Tom Izzo's got another great team this year. He's not he didn't build that team by just pointing out the turnovers and that's the end of it. He catches them doing something right and praising the action he wants repeated. And I think that's what the best teams do.
That's right. Absolutely. And I think it's so important what you just highlighted there to continue to shine that spotlight in as many different places and just continue to build that up. Talking about team building, and I think I love the reference you made to Coach Izzo. What are some of the, or rather, who do you think in college basketball right now has very good teamness and a chemistry that may lead them to the promised land here as we get the tournament underway?
There are several. Michigan State is one of them,
Mm.
and I think Michigan State's one of those teams. Even though I think they're talented, this isn't one of Tom Izzo's most talented teams that he's ever had, but it's talented. I don't want to be disrespectful to the players; they're really good.
Sure.
But I think the results have been largely, the positive results have been largely because of the togetherness they've shown and the toughness and cohesive spirit they've had through the adversity they've faced. Like I think that they haven't shot the ball well. I mean,
Right.
some of the numbers indicate they shouldn't have the record they have, but they've adapted to not shooting it particularly well, and they haven't let it bother them. And they go out and fight and find ways to win together. And I think you can see a real like kind of competitive spirit that's collective instead of just certain individuals. I think Houston has that. Houston is an unbelievable culture, and I was really happy to hear Tom Izzo the other day say he thinks his culture is the best in the country because Tom's not a bragger,
No.
and and I was glad to see him evolve to actually brag because that's something he should brag about because I agree with him on that. I think Duke's got a really good team spirit, and they've got a bunch of guys that have they don't seem to care who gets the credit, and a lot of them are getting credit because of that. It seems like, and then I tend to think that that Florida's got that. There are a number of teams that do, but just like competitiveness or things like that, there are different levels of it. But those are kind of the highest levels.
Sure. Sure. You know, an interesting one that you mentioned was Duke, being your connection to Duke University and the history there. I was wondering if you could touch on what any involvement that you have with the program is now, and maybe some of the ways that you've seen it change and shift over time now that it's John Shire's program and not Coach K's.
I mean, my involvement in the program is no different than my involvement in the Michigan State program or the Houston program.
Sure.
I'm so removed from my years as a player. I'm 61 years old now.
Sure.
It's always my alma mater, and when like my wife and I, our daughter went there, we give money to Duke just like every alum gives money to their school and all that. That's great. When it comes to winning and losing, Duke's on their own, just like everybody else. I'm happy for like if Duke and Michigan State play, I don't care who wins. I'm always happy for the winner, and you feel for the loser, and then you move on to the next game. I go to too many games to worry about who wins and loses. Um, but my relationship, I think my relationship with the school has always been a strong one, but it's evolved. It used to be kind of you felt really close to it because you were close in age
Mm,
to the students and to the players. But now that I'm really far removed from it, I don't even know my way around campus anymore. It's changed so much. And there are certain parts of it that are the same, but I haven't, I went to school there 40 years ago, and that's a long time. It doesn't seem like it. There's parts of me that remember it like it was yesterday, but intellectually, I know that's a long time ago, and so it's evolved into a totally different relationship. I'm feel like more of a supporter of things. So
mm,
you see, like now you see a player, a college player. Like I'm not gonna be, I can't be friends with a college player.
sure.
I'm too old for that. But what you can do is be supportive. You remember what it was like. We've had kids and all that, and hey, what they really need to be is supported. And if they ask for advice, help them. And I do that with players all over. I kind of nice really at this age where people may come to you for advice or to help them network or find a job or things like that. And whenever I can, I try to help. It's a nice stage of life for that kind of thing.
mm. Absolutely. I think so many of the things that you touched on in terms of relationship to the program and the stage of life are very similar actually to both my dad and my uncle. And the connection I wanted to draw to you actually is being from Southern California. Both my dad and my uncle were born and raised in Redondo Beach and played
Oh,
at
really?
Torrance High.
We
And
used to kick their ass.
uh-huh. That's right. And my uncle actually went on to play at UC Santa Barbara from 72 to 76. He was there as a gaucho. So I wanted to say that's kind of a great connection. But I
Oh,
think,
you had a lot of. I think the South High. We were the same league, so I went to Rolling Hills High. I think
sure,
they were the Spartans. I think it was
that's
the
right.
South High Spartans. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, there was a really good player there when I was playing. I graduated in 1982, so
Sure.
a little bit after, but a really good player named Greg Hubert that I used to have to guard once in a while, and it was yeah, we had a lot of great games with South High.
Certainly. Certainly. Well, Jay, I want to be conscientious of your time, but before we head out here, I do have one more question. Uh,
Sure.
you know, I think we touched on it earlier, the busyness of the schedule, the traveling. And one of the ways that I resonate to you in your way of getting away from the basketball scene is your love for the game of golf. So I would love nothing more if you told me your favorite story from the American Century.
Oh, the American Century Championship in Lake Tahoe.
Yes.
Boy, there's so many. I love that tournament. It is so much fun because the people are so nice. I love to play golf. I'll play anytime, anywhere, and getting to play in that setting with so many nice people, and it's not just sort of the ones you think where you're like celebrity fanboy, which I have been at that tournament, getting to play with the people I played with. But the people from American Century themselves couldn't be nicer.
Mhm.
And it's a Brian, it's a real lesson on the CEO of American Century is a guy named Jonathan Thomas, and it's a real lesson in how to treat people. That it doesn't cost you anything to be nice, and the people that he employs in his charge may be the nicest among the nicest people I've ever met. And they're really good at their jobs. They go out and they earn people money and all that. They do their jobs and they're diligent about it. But they just couldn't be nicer, more thoughtful people. And I'm always kind of drawn to that. That and like not to blow smoke at Michigan State because you're a Michigan State guy, but that's one of the things that always drew me to Izzo, that he's
Mhm.
this hard charging competitor that when the game's going on, he looks like he wants to wrap his hands around your throat and pull your heart out. But he's as nice a person and thoughtful and generous as you're ever going to find. And competitor and nice person are not mutually exclusive.
No.
And I always think about that. That you can strive to win and all that stuff and do a great job and be ambitious and still be mindful and empathetic and understand that it's about more than that.
Hmm. Jay, thank you so much for your time. I can't tell you how much it means to me, and I'm so excited to go and share this show with anyone who does listen. And I just want to tell you, it's amazing to be able to connect. If you had to, and this is where I want to leave it, if you had to prognosticate right now who we might see as a Final Four, who would you say?
I think there are about, Brian, 8 teams that I think can win the whole thing. The Final Four is a wider net because it's a little bit easier. It's really hard to get there, but it's a little bit easier to get to a Final Four than it is to win the whole thing.
Sure.
But Michigan State's certainly in the Final Four. I mean, they're a Final Four, I would say, favorite among the top probably dozen teams. I tend to think there are about 8 that can win it. And I may be short, giving short shrift to a couple programs, but I would say the top 4 in my view are Auburn, Duke. I think Florida is up there, and then I would say Houston or Alabama would be the fourth slot. But it's really tough at the top.
Most certainly. Well, folks, that's been the Rec Room episode 20 with Jay Bilas. Jay, thank you so much. And really hope that the month of March is just a continued blessing for you and that the crews continue to produce at the high level that they have year in and year out, and that this tournament is just wonderful.
Yeah, I think it'll be great, and it was a pleasure getting to know you, Brian. Thank you for having me, and tell your dad and your uncle that we used to beat them senseless in the Rolling Hills South Torrance matchups.
That's
Really
right.
embarrassing for South Torrance.
No, I'm going to clip that and I'm going to share that with them. That's beautiful. Thank you, Jay.
Thank you very much. Have fun in Nashville.
Absolutely.